Welcome back to this video series. In the previous video we did some workflow tests. Now we're going to test failover. And that should end all my use cases. I'm hoping that this series is good for you guys in terms of figuring out new functionality, or also any tips on how to maintain your own demo environment. So without further ado, let's just test failover. So this is the outgoing architecture that we have today. It uses for on-premise, it uses Windows failover clustering. So I'm going to connect to my cluster so you can see how I have things set up here. So let's take a look here. Make sure that all the nodes are active. See, this would have been a problem. And okay, so what do we have here? We have the application that represents privileged access service here. And when you look at the properties of it, you can see the failover options I have, including dependencies, right? So when you look at the resources that it's using the shared disk, it's using a DNS name, and it's using both services, the process database and IIS. So there's several tests that you can do. For example, you can test the reliability of the service itself. So if I look at the properties and look at, failover, right? It'll basically restart the service if something goes wrong. So right now the owner node is member 2. So what I can do is stop one of the services that it uses. One of the services that it uses is IIS. So notice that it's running. I'm gonna stop it. So if I refresh here, because this cluster is a single instance, very different than what's gonna happen with HyperScalable CAS, where you can have the web layer be separated. It'll have a little hiccup here, but it'll come back. And what ended up happening here, if you reload, it'll start it over again. And in event log for the cluster, you should see some of the critical events that have happened. For example, that anything related to this script have to be restarted. Okay, so this shows you that any dependent service, the database, the web layer, are going to be resilient. The next one would be, for example, to do what I call a graceful failover, in which if you're doing some sort of maintenance, maybe an upgrade or a service pack, you could potentially just move it. So I'm going to move it to the best possible node. So the two nodes are these guys here. So my expectation is, and this typically takes a little longer. So this, depending on how fast your systems are, you could reach this. So this, you shouldn't panic about this. That means that the application isn't able to talk to state. But in this case, it is. When it did that from a Windows clustering perspective, it actually swapped the disks. So the storage, my shared disk, actually went to member 3, right? So and my quorum is in member 2. After a couple of seconds here, I should be able to be here, no problem. The other is an ungraceful termination. Maybe I go into this machine and shut it down. So this is, I lost a node and I want to test failover. So when you look at this, I should see already a pending state. And notice that it already went to member 2. So let's take a look. And notice that it's still starting up, right? So the key here is there is a little bit of a delay when you lose a node. And this is more based on the architecture of Windows clustering. Another thing that I personally don't like is, the concept of scalability, right? Now with hyperscalable paths, you have web nodes, background nodes, which is a job system. You have relay nodes. You can add as many as you want. And another dependency of domain join systems, at least in the version that I have here, I know that 2019 takes away that requirement, but from an automation perspective, you're adding another thing that could go wrong. So part of my goals when I set up hyperscalable paths is to do it with non-domain join machines. So notice that it went back, and notice that it's member 2 is the node. And again, if I wanted to do another graceful one after member 3, oh, it's not up. I just shut it down. I could just transfer it over when it's done. So we'll just give it a little time. So I'm gonna pause real quick. All right, so our system is back up. I just want to see if I can transfer it over. So it looks like this node is back up again. Let's move it over. So that meant you forgot to put it in maintenance mode, and then you apply that service pack and it restarted. But then you figure it out, and now you're okay. Let me just do it right. So again, it's gonna bounce to this process where, if I were to refresh the client application here, it won't find that it's up the database yet. So you get the, application starting type of thing. But who knows? Maybe it's already there. I just want to validate that you can see that there's a transition now to this member 2 machine here. All right, so this concludes the tests. I will repeat these tests again when I migrate to hyperscalable paths. I know it's kind of like a long process, but I do it to learn myself. If others can benefit, you're welcome.